Woke up this morning feeling kinda blue, a little sad, but I know just what to do. Whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh, oh. I have learned that I can go to Jesus. He lifts me up whenever I need it. Whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh, oh. When I'm worried, when I'm feeling down, that's when God comes through, turns it all around. Yeah, He gives me joy in every situation, keeps my spirits high, no matter what I'm facing. Oh, 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 oh. I'm feeling better, God made all the difference. He's always here to listen. Oh, 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 oh. He is my source, the one who gives me life. He is my God and He's good all the time. Oh, 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 oh. When I'm worried, when I'm feeling down, that's when God comes through, turns it all around. Yeah, He gives me joy in every situation, keeps my spirits high, no matter what I'm facing. Oh, 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 When I'm worried, when I'm feeling down, that's when God comes through and turns it all around. Yeah, He gives me joy in every situation, keeps my spirits high, no matter what I'm facing. I can't help but feel a little down, a little worried when I look around. That's why my hope is in the Lord. I fix my eyes upon the God who gives, 'cause all I need is what I have in Him. That's why my hope is in the Lord. My hope is in the Lord. I belong to Him. He will never let me go. My hope is in the Lord. I can count on Him. My hope is in the Lord. I can't help but feel a little down, a little worried when I look around. That's why my hope is in the Lord. I fix my eyes upon the God who gives, 'cause all I need is what I have in Him. That's why my hope is in the Lord. My hope is in the Lord. I belong to Him. He will never let me go. My hope is in the Lord. I can count on Him. My hope is in the Lord. My hope is in the Lord. I belong to Him.
Happy Sunday, or Monday, or Friday, or whatever day you are choosing to join me. I am glad you are here. Have you ever had someone do something wrong to you? Have you ever been treated unfairly? How did that make you feel? How did you want to react? Did you want to get even, or did you want to show mercy? Mercy is showing kindness or forgiveness when punishment is deserved. The Bible teaches us that we should trust God and not seek revenge. But when we feel hurt or angry at someone, it is common for our sinful hearts to want revenge. Today, we will learn about a time David had a chance to get even with one of his greatest enemies. How do you think David reacted? We'll learn more soon. Last week, we talked about music a little bit and how listening to it can be so enjoyable and encouraging. Have you ever listened to a band warming up when all of the instruments are playing different things all at the same time? It sounds pretty chaotic. And not at all enjoyable. The thing about music is you have to wait on the timing of the composer and conductor. If you play when you aren't supposed to, it can ruin what would otherwise be a beautiful song. You know, it kind of reminds me of our Bible story. David had a chance to try to force his own timing onto a situation, and instead he chose to show mercy and trust God. Let me tell you about it. Before we get too far into the story, let's review our big picture question so we can remember to focus our minds on the important truth we have been learning. How is Jesus the perfect king? Jesus perfectly rules over the universe as the King of Kings. That means that Jesus isn't just a king, he's the king over all other kings. His rules and choices are always perfect in every way. He only does what is righteous and good. David was a good man and became a great king, but only Jesus is our perfect King of Kings. One quality I value in a leader is mercifulness. Someone who is merciful shows kindness or forgiveness when punishment is deserved. I make mistakes and sin every day. To be punished as I truly deserve would be bad news. In learning about the Israelites and the earthly kings who ruled over them, I am thankful that God's plan was for his people to experience his mercy and be ruled by a better king, a perfect king. How is Jesus the perfect king? Jesus perfectly rules over the universe as the King of Kings. The stories in the Bible fit together to tell us the story of how God rescues sinners through his son, Jesus. In the Old Testament, we learn about the Israelites. God chose them as part of his promise to bless the world through Abraham's family. When the Israelites demanded a king and King Saul disobeyed God, God chose David to be Israel's king. David did not become king right away. He was still a boy when he fought Goliath. After David killed Goliath, he served King Saul and led the army. God was with David, and David was successful. People danced and sang songs about David, and King Saul was jealous. When Saul tried to kill David, David escaped to another city. He traveled through the wilderness and hid in caves. One day, David and Saul met again. Listen to this Bible story.
David was hiding in the wilderness. He had served King Saul and won many battles. But now, Saul was jealous of David and wanted to kill him. Saul took 3,000 men and went looking for David. David and his men were hiding in the back of a cave when Saul happened to pass by. Saul decided to go inside. David's men saw Saul and said, "Look, God said he would hand your enemy over to you. This is the day. You can do whatever you want to him." David got close to Saul and secretly cut off the corner of Saul's robe. Saul didn't realize that David was there. David felt bothered about what he had done, and he told his men, "I won't fight the king. God chose him." So David did not let his men fight against Saul. Then Saul left the cave and went on his way. David left the cave and called to Saul, "My lord the king." Saul turned around and David knelt low before him. "Why do you believe people who say I'm trying to hurt you?" David asked. "See, God handed you over to me today in the cave. I had a chance to kill you, but I showed mercy." David showed Saul the corner of the robe that he had cut. "I have done nothing against you," David said. "God might punish you, but I will never harm you. Let God decide who is right and who is wrong. May he protect me from you." When Saul heard David's words, he cried. "You are more righteous than I," Saul said, "because you have done what is good to me, though I have done what is evil to you. Most people would kill an enemy, but you have let me go. May God reward you for your kindness." Saul realized God was with David, and he knew David would be the king of Israel. "Promise me you won't kill my family," Saul said. So David promised. Then Saul went home, and David and his men returned to their hiding place. David showed mercy to Saul, his enemy, because David trusted God's plan. Jesus also trusted his Father's plan. He died on the cross so his enemies could experience God's mercy and live forever as part of God's family.
King Saul and David had a long history together. Early on, David served the king by playing the lyre for him whenever he felt unwell. After David killed Goliath, he became good friends with Saul's son, Jonathan. But David's success made Saul jealous. Saul could see that David was rising in popularity. He won victory after victory. Saul tried several times to kill David, and David fled to Moab. David's family and about 400 other men joined David, and he became their leader. Saul heard where David was and went after him, intending to kill him. Imagine the surprise of David and the men with him when they discovered Saul in the same cave where they were hiding. A man told David this was his chance to do whatever he wanted to Saul. David could have killed him, but David showed mercy even though Saul hated him. When Saul realized that David had spared his life, Saul knew God had chosen David to be Israel's king. Like we just saw in the video, when David had a chance to kill Saul, David showed mercy to Saul, his enemy. David trusted God's plan. Jesus also trusted his Father's plan. He died on the cross so we, his enemies, can experience God's mercy. God forgives everyone who confesses sin and trusts in Jesus. In Jesus, we have a life forever as part of God's family. How is Jesus the perfect king? Jesus perfectly rules over the universe as the King of Kings. Do you remember what I asked you at the beginning? Have you ever had someone do something wrong to you? Did you think about trying to get even? Is that the right thing to do? Let's see what Pastor Brian has to say this week when he answers a question just like that.
Hey there, I'm Pastor Brian, and it's time for Questions from Kids. Today, Hannah from Sherwood, Arkansas asks,
Why shouldn't we want revenge on people who have wronged us? Wouldn't that be fair for what they did?
Hannah, you know it's hard when somebody does something wrong to us. I know there are times where somebody may do something really mean or hurtful, and it hurts us deeply, and it's hard to see them, especially at times when it seems like they've gotten away with it. But think about our Bible story today. In our Bible story, David had this chance to kill Saul, and think about all the bad, hard things that Saul had done to David. And he had this perfect opportunity. He could have gotten rid of Saul, and all that would have been over with. But he didn't. Instead, he showed Saul mercy. And we can learn something from that we too have been called to show mercy, not though because David showed mercy to Saul, but because God has shown mercy to us. Here's the thing we have to remember, that we were enemies of God. We did wrong things to God. We wronged him deeply. We rebelled against him. We sinned against him. We sought our fame rather than his. We did so many bad things to God. And God had every right to give justice toward us and to deal with us the way we deserved, but he didn't. He showed us grace, mercy, and kindness instead. So we deserved punishment, but he gave us mercy and actually took our punishment and gave it to Jesus. So that right there should cause us to live with great humility. When others do something wrong to us, we know that we have not been wronged more than we have wronged God. So we want to pursue mercy and grace in our lives because of what God has given to us. But here's the other wrinkle that we have to keep in mind. God is a God of justice. And while it may not seem like that person that wronged us is being dealt with, we can know for sure that God will bring justice into their lives at some point in some way, whether we see it or not. And so we can rest in knowing that we don't have to get justice for ourselves. God is better at it than we are, and he will deal with it. So here's the question for you today. Who should you show mercy to this week?
It's hard when we have been hurt, and often our natural or first reaction is to want to hurt back. But that is not what God has called us to do. When I think about all of the things that I have said or done that God has forgiven me for and shown mercy and grace, it is so much easier to show that same forgiveness and mercy and grace to others. It's time for our key passage. Are you ready? Say it with me. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. Your rule is for all generations. The Lord is faithful in all his words and gracious in all his actions. Psalm 145:13. Who wrote Psalm 145? David. God chose David to be Israel's next king. David's time as king would not last forever, but God's kingdom does last forever. David would rule for his lifetime, but God rules forever. In God's perfect kingdom, Jesus is the perfect king. How is Jesus the perfect king? Jesus perfectly rules over the universe as the King of Kings. Psalm 3:3 says, "But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory and the one who lifts up my head." The Lord is like a shield around us. He protects his people. He gives us hope, reminding us to look to him. Can you believe that it's November already? This year is going fast, and so did our time together today. David showed mercy to Saul, and God blessed him. Come back next week to find out the very special promise that God made to David. Have a wonderful week.